Just be rest assured, Shannon did my guess with an amazing green.
Plexiglass everywhere.
Good evening. This is the regular board meeting of the Santa Cruz Valley Unified School District number 35 Governing Board. Today is Tuesday, August 25th, 2020. The time is 5 o'clock. This meeting is being held in the Daniel Fontes Governing Board Room, District Office, 570 Camino Lito Galindo, Rio Rico, Arizona. Let's stand for the pledge. Mr. Ramirez, would you lead us?
Yes, ma'am. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call. Mr. Joel Kramer.
Present.
Ms. Maria Newman. We may be attending telephonically, but we will keep our ears open for that. Mr. John Hayes.
Here.
Mr. Rene Ramirez.
Here.
Myself. Yes, hello. Is that perhaps Ms. Maria Newman? Okay. Right now she's not here. Thank you. Adoption of the agenda, Mr. Verdugo.
Yeah, just one recommended change under the consent agenda item number 4, the IGA for District 28, under page 2, section 5 compensation. Where it says $32,000 should be the $3,200 or 10 monthly payments of $3,200.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other changes?
No other changes, thank you.
Is there a motion to approve the adoption of the agenda with that stated change?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye. Aye. Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you. Superintendent's report, Mr. Verdugo.
Thank you. So I noted quite a few things on the agenda, just so that also in the regular part of the agenda, just so we have a lot to get through in the last few meetings, and I want us to kind of stay on course and respect everybody's time, not only here in the boardroom, but also in our community. So I just wanted to say that before I got into some of these. Wanted to congratulate Bailey Akamada and her West Point affirmation. She was one of our first students to get into West Point, and so we have done an interview, and that will be actually sent out here soon. But it was really nice talking to her and hearing her story of how she ended up at West Point. And she had initially, we won't serve too much because we had the interview, but she initially had done a summer at the Naval Academy and decided that was not for her, which was interesting. So, but I won't share too much more of that. Also wanted to say thank you to the Transportation Department and their entire team over there for the bus parade. And it was received very well by the community, and it was a great opportunity to do an interview with them as well, and all the things that they're doing. And again, it's just an example of the things happening within our district and the community. Had a recent Chief 60 board meeting, and the Chief 60 is looking at releasing their data points for where they're at, and so we'll see. They still have some gathering to do, but it looks like the progress meter has increased, so that's good news, but we'll see where it's at, but that'll be released soon. Did a Rotary presentation and virtually, and it was nice to see all of the Rotary members and talk about reopening schools. And through that, we have Tony Bartola, one of our members, is putting forth a request for some technology, which was great. So always good to be involved in those groups, and you always end up either learning something or getting something from it. And then wanted to highlight Sodexo Food Service. They have done an outstanding job all through the summer and now into the fall with getting our students fed and being creative about it. I know that they, and I put in your social media just as a note because they have done a really nice job working with Shannon to get information out and some very nice flyers. The Papas Locas the other day went out, and some kids were very excited and sent in a picture of them and talking about how Sodexo really hooked it up today, and so it was a very cute picture. But I wanted to congratulate them and thank them for all of their hard work and continued work of getting our students fed. And then the last one there, the Montrose Health Partnership. We're still working on the telemedicine. We have the IGA that will be in our agenda tonight, but also the COVID-19 testing. We'll talk about some additional testing, but had the testing for 2 days and had quite a few people test, and so we will continue that partnership. So I wanted to thank Dr. Pereira, Dr. Williams, and their entire team for working with us to get that testing done. So, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Governing Board Member Report. Ms. Newman, have you joined us? No. Okay, Mr. Ramirez?
I have nothing, Madam President. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Hayes?
2 items, Madam President. One, the bus parade. I want to congratulate everybody on that and on their impeccable timing on that parade. As I was doing a 5-hour class for certification I'm trying to achieve, and literally right as we ended that class, the bus parade went by with all the honking. So it was just impeccable timing on their part. The other thing is, apparently last I heard, which was just 2 days ago, the AIA has stated that cross-country will start on the 12th of September. So hopefully the metrics work out for everybody and some sense of normalcy can start to return to the athletics. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Kramer?
No, I think I'm good, thank you.
Okay. I really appreciated the principal reports. I hope that you all are enjoying doing them. If it's a strain to make these the way that they are now, then go back to the old way, but I certainly am enjoying them the way you're formatting them now. I really like the override signage and the placements. I think that color, by having it a darker red, is very, very nice and almost stands out because of all the other signs that are so much bright red. And again, the bus parade was super. So thank you. Okay, request to release from contract, Ms. Kelsey Lee. Mr. Verdugo.
Thank you. You should have received a Ms. Leaf's letter. So her husband has pursued employment out of state, and so she has kept us aware through the entire time. And normally when that happens, we know that there is life-changing events, and that we respect that, and we do respect her communication through the entire process. So my recommendation is to release her from her contract and waive the liquidated damages.
Thank you. Is there a motion then to release Ms. Kelsey Lee from her 2021 contract and waive liquidated damages due to personal issues out of her control?
So moved.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, and we can have discussion. Mr. Ramirez?
I have nothing to say.
Okay, Mr. Hayes?
Just one thing I want to note is I remember that when we were having the budget cuts, Ms. Lee fought very hard to keep the band program alive and going. And I want to thank her for that commitment, and hate to see her go, but I know that she'll bring that commitment and that passion to her students wherever she lands. Thank you.
Yeah, I truly want to thank her for her service, and she certainly has been involved and passionate, and she will be missed. Mr. Kramer?
She worked for us for 6 years, is that correct?
Yes, I believe so.
6 years? So, and from what I gathered, Mr. Lee, your recommendation is because of her husband transferring. What is the plan now to, who's covering for her?
We have other applicants, and so we finishing up an interview, and that'll be a recommendation, a former student of ours that will be coming back.
So we won't have a substitute, we'll have
That
an
will
actual
actually,
teacher.
yes, we actually have a teacher.
Okay. That's always my concern when we have people like this go, and I understand life, and especially now in this day and age. But certainly always, because of that, we always want that. That's why I ask. Because if we didn't have a sub and all that, I may have said, well, wait a minute, time out here. May have not been so supportive. But the fact that you've got somebody coming up, then I guess I could thank you. Thank you.
And I should check if Ms. Newman has joined us yet.
Yes, I have. A little late, but I'm here.
It's okay. And did you have a comment on this agenda item?
No, because I don't really know where we're at, but if someone leaving, good luck.
It's the request to release from contract Ms. Kelsey Lee.
That's fine. Good luck.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second, we've had discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, Rio Rico High School expansion and bond project update, Mr. Verdugo.
Thank you. I don't know if, Ms. Brown, are you on the line today?
Yes, Mr. Verdugo, good evening. Good evening.
Thank you.
I'm here.
Thank you. If you could give an update, I know you've been working to get the casitas and the annex worked out. So if you would like to give the board an update, please.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board. Tomorrow, actually, we have a walkthrough schedule for companies to come and visit the building that is next to our district office, and also the two casitas behind Cuapi Movie School. We are moving into the asbestos abatement phase of this project, and as soon as we have quote for that service, then we'll be able to move into that phase. That should be almost the last phase of that project. Once they remove the asbestos from the buildings, then we can move into the demolition of the building. And then we also have a walkthrough scheduled tomorrow for Rio Rico High School to go and with the architects to discuss the final changes or drafts of the drawings regarding the expansion of Rio Rico High School, as well as the enhancements that are coming to Rio Rico High School with the bond proceeds. We're also in the process of getting quotes to perform our due diligence for the lot where we have the ag farm. We have to, before we do any excavation in that land, we have to do a survey to make sure that the land is clear, that we're not going to bump into any artifacts, that we don't want to have that as we start construction. So there's a requirement to conduct a survey of the land before we move forward with any project. So that's where we are as far as the bond update. Any questions?
Questions?
I have none. Thank you, Madam President.
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Newman?
No questions.
Mr. Kramer?
No, I'm good, thank you.
I have no questions. Thank you.
Yep, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, school safety grant, SRO, and DARE, Mr. Verdugo.
Yes, so we had a request by the board to discuss the SRO, and while we were at it, I thought it was a good time to discuss the other school safety that we have in place. And so I asked Dr. Linderville, who is in charge of student services, to put together a brief memo just describing as an FYI what each of those areas are, and then if she can discuss any further or answer any questions. So Dr. Linderville?
Hi, good evening, Madam President, members of the board. As I stated in my email, we currently are operating with two programs that are 100% backed by Santa Cruz County. That's our SRO program and our DARE program. As I shared in the memo, we were able to continue to work with the SRO as well as the DARE officer to offer and implement the DARE classes, because we feel like, number one, that's a really important connection for our students, and two, it is also really important as they move into middle and high school to have that drug and alcohol awareness. So I can also say that moving into our hybrid learning, we will have the school resource officers returning to campus, and we've scheduled multiple meetings to discuss that with Santa Cruz County Sheriff's Office. In terms of the school safety grant, that grant was a competitive grant that awarded us 3 counseling positions. It awarded one at Rio Rico High School, one at Mountain View, and one at Quatamundi Middle School. And then in addition to that, we reevaluated our current numbers and our current needs, and we also have a counselor that was added to the 6th through 8th grade programs at Calabasas. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Before we get to that, I just wanted to make a comment about our partnership with the county. We're very fortunate that they fund the SROs and the DARE program. In many communities, that is not the case, where it is upon the district to do so. We've been very fortunate to have that working relationship with the county, and we appreciate that, and that they've been able to continue to do that and know the value that brings to our district from a school safety standpoint. And I know that there's always a concern of having law enforcement on campuses. And for us, when I was a principal and now a superintendent, not only does it provide that safety, but it also provides that relationship that we want to have with law enforcement, as far as not feeling that there is a negative with law enforcement. And they go into the classes, and they know our kids, they attend games, they coach, they ref games, so they're a very big part of our community. And so we've been very fortunate to have that relationship that is maybe a little bit different than other communities that have issues, that have the idea that they don't look like their students. Well, I would be able to say that pretty much every SRO we've had looks like majority of our students. And so that's something that I think speaks highly of not only our sheriff's department, but just our community in general, that we are able to make sure that we utilize them in the way that is, one, successful, but two, it really does promote a positive partnership. So I want to thank the county for that. So any questions?
Okay, Mr. Harris?
No, I haven't. I agree with you. Just a comment. I agree. They do a great job, great service. And they've done a great job since I even started here. All the 20 years that I was here, they're awesome. It's great to have them on campus. Thank you.
Mr. Hayes?
No questions, thank you.
Ms. Newman?
Yes, thank you. I was the one that brought this up, and my question was not so much as what they do on campus, but if they were used as actual law enforcement personnel in their capacity as well. Because I had gone to several conferences and a couple on Zoom as well during this hectic time that we are undergoing. And the questions were brought up, because sometimes if you have an SRO on campus, is that person also used as law enforcement person as well? Because sometimes the kids get attached to the SRO as an SRO, and then all of a sudden he comes in as a law enforcement, and then that relationship is broken, and he is no longer viewed as somebody a student can trust and go to and ask for certain situations. That was my concern as to how the role is being used. If you catch a kid with, illegal weapon or drug, you call in somebody else or your dad SRO, use that as the law enforcement personnel, because that's where I think there's going to be trouble. And I've had a couple of parents in the community say, this is where my son or daughter has a problem because they trusted this person as an SRO, and then all of a sudden they come in real tough as a cop. And that's where I was concerned at, and the same with our SROs as well, because they're trained in law enforcement techniques. And again, you have that relationship, and I know they have to be tough. I'm not questioning their toughness or their job description, but sometimes those lines can blur, as well as the lines of diversity. We have a lot of diverse kids in our schools, and I mean right now the minority is the majority, so to speak, but we do have a lot of color, and, it's sometimes it's so hard to make a good decision. And I just want to make sure all of our children are safe, and all of our children are heard.
Dr. Bill, did you want to respond?
I can say that we keep the roles of, in terms of discipline, Ms. Newman, I hear what your question is. Procedurally, a law enforcement is not, of course, involved in any of our discipline or our investigations. But there are times in which the officer does get called in to assist if we have a situation on a campus where a student may have, a weapon. Most of the time, additional officers do respond, but our SRO usually is involved in that, primarily because of that relationship that they've established with our students. But, in terms of fracturing that, bond that they may make, I don't have a lot of any kind of data to share with you on any of that, and I haven't really ever received any comments. It sounds like maybe you have gotten a few, where but I do think that their roles are typically defined. They are in uniform. They do have some, requirements to uphold certain statutory things, within the district, or even if they're out doing traffic control or whatever that may be. But I certainly hear your concerns, and I think it's something that we can continue to work with the sheriff's department on to make sure that we're offering that, diversity, number one, and number two, the opportunity for students to have that relationship with law enforcement.
Yeah, because to me, it just seems like it's very important in these times that our students, all of them, that they feel comfortable talking to our law enforcement, our SROs, and whatever, in that capacity as a school resource, but also not to see them as a threat. I know they're going to be seen that way. It's not like they're not. But to constantly see them as a deterrent is also harmful to that other role that they have to play in our schools. And, for some kids to say, and this has been said, and I'm not going to deny it, because some people there do know it's been said, oh, well, I know so-and-so's our SRO. He knows my dad, so I can do this and I'll get away with it. It has been said, and I know it. I've heard kids say this. And most of the time, unfortunately, it doesn't happen that way. Or so-and-so, they come and they hug me and they say they're my friend, so I know I'm going to get by on this if I do something wrong. That's where the line is getting blurred, and that's where, little things happen. And that's what I don't want to see. I can't think of the word right now. But this, you watch my back and I'll watch yours. You be my little snitch and tell me who the bad kids are and I'll protect you. Because I've seen it happen on campuses And that's what I don't want to happen.
Okay, I certainly understand that, and I just also want to make sure that that the governing board is aware that our administrators are trained on our discipline, and that is kept very separate from the law enforcement side. So law enforcement has, different rules and different regulations, and if those things are happening, it's really important that, one, we figure out how and why, but the administrative side should be independent of the sheriff's department's investigation. Typically, we finish our investigation, we make our recommendations in terms of school discipline, and then we turn that over to the sheriff's department, not the SRO, but the sheriff's department. And it's up to them to determine whether or not they're going to proceed with anything. So we do try to keep that side very separate. So, but I definitely hear your concerns, and we can make sure that we address them when we have our trainings and our meetings.
Yeah, well, thank you for taking the time. I don't want to, take too much time, but I want to make sure that the community out there knows that the question was asked and that it was answered. Thank you.
Mr. Coleman?
I have nothing.
Okay. So, moving on. Distance learning plan and Santa Cruz County COVID-19 benchmarks. Mr. Verdugo.
All right, thank you. So I listed quite a few things there to kind of just review and give you an update of where we're at with the DLP, because that again is what we had to turn into the state that is now kind of the plan for the district and how we move forward. So that first thing there, wanted to make sure that the board was aware it's a ever-changing process. Every day we hear something new about how far we should be apart, what type of mask, or any of the different protocols. And so we maintain that on our website, and we've made sure we update, and we're asking our site leaders to review that with their staff again, because there's been questions. So we want to make sure that we have the most up-to-date mitigation process. What happens if somebody is suspected of having some symptoms, and what's the next step, and just making sure that our staff is aware of those. And so we have updated those, and we'll continue as we receive guidance from the health department and the CDC. But I just wanted to make sure that the board was aware and the community is aware that it's new for everybody. So every time we do something, it's a new thing, and we're changing. And so we're making sure it's as up to date as possible. The parent survey, so we had a parent survey about the distance learning, and we're still gathering that information. We did it by site so that we can actually dig down a little bit deeper, and so we're going to discuss that with the principals. We gave them the preliminary results last Friday, and then we'll discuss it again this Friday to make sure that if there's any issues that we're not addressing or ways that we can improve, that we will do so. And we wanted to get a lot of feedback from our parents and students to see how that is moving forward. The August 17th, which was this last week, of the required having our learning spaces. So initially, when we started, we didn't have that many requests, and now we have quite a few more requests, and ranging from 20 to 30 students currently on our campuses. And so we've been able to again follow the mitigation process, make sure that our protocols are in place, and make sure that those kids are supported. I know there was some concern, neighboring districts and other of actually opening and doing that, because technically, it's for kids in need, and in our community, pretty much, that's all of our kids. And so we wanted to make sure that we had a way to help get them if they needed to truly be on a campus, and then also provide anything off of campus if we're able to. So the principals, we had a form that they're filling out, and then they're able to make the request, and then we work with the principal to make sure that we're identifying the need and then meeting that need. So it seems to be working well, knock on wood. Instructional minutes. Mr. Shadler and his team were reviewing kind of where we're at as far as our instructional minutes to make sure that we had those in place. So we are reviewing that again to make sure that we meet all of the expectations, because it's still, the 180 days is still in place, as well as the instructional minutes are in place. And so we're reviewing that to make sure that moving forward, because we did extend that time, or we're going to extend it even further than we initially did with the in-person. And the in-person was going to give us additional minutes. So now we're having to adjust our distance learning so that we can match and make sure that we meet those additional minutes that we need. The online platform, again, as I mentioned, we started out looking at to try to have the best platform possible and best tools possible. And we initially made a purchase of what was called Odysseyware for the K-5, and it didn't have as robust of usage as we were hoping. So again, as we always do, and this is what we tell everybody, that if we figure out something that we have to redo it, then we redo it, we take action. So the team is looking at a new platform. It's more tied to our Ingenuity, which is the secondary. And Mr. Shadler and his team are working to implement that, and we'll begin that second quarter. So we'll transition into it at that point. But in the meantime, teachers are still working really hard to provide it as, they're having to work, unfortunately, a little bit harder than we were hoping, because they have to go through and do a lot more supplemental work than initially we were hoping with that platform. So now we have to go back and revamp and train and do some things. But the thing about, again, our district is if we make a mistake or we have something that we know we can improve, we don't wait. We don't sit there and say, well, we made that mistake, we'll wait until next year. That doesn't do our students or our community any good. So when we have an issue like that, we say, okay, let's roll our sleeves up, let's get to work and figure out how we can make it better. So I just wanted to convey that to the board and the community, that we know, yes, we have some issues, because it's all new, not an excuse. We were hoping that what we started out with was perfect, but unfortunately it wasn't. So now we have to go back and figure out how to make it better. So we're in the process of doing that. Including the next thing, which is the Google Meet upgrades. We have a lot of Google Meet class and Google Classroom, and they hurt us. And so in September there will be some Google Meet updates with a variety of things, more safety measures, more ways to do breakout rooms, and that's going to help our teachers, because they've had to do a lot more work of creating rooms when they have breakouts, and then that causes the equipment to slow down, because now they have numerous rooms going at the same time. So now with the upgrades, from what I'm understanding, is that it'll be built in, and there will be more safety precautions and other tools that they're adding to Google Meet to match Zoom and other ways that people are doing things. And so, but we'll again update the board at that, because it's going to take some training for that as well to implement. The CIA has a lot of things. I have to say that both Dr. Linderville and Mr. Shadler have a lot on their plate, from the student services and safety and facilities, and then the CIA with the instruction and curriculum. We just have a lot of things going on, but they've been able to handle that so far. The Wi-Fi hotspots, we got those out, so we had our additional ones come in, and making sure that we get those to the students and families and teachers that need them. So those are out. We're still awaiting our additional technology devices, 460 additional Chromebooks that we are waiting on. Just received word that the county, I want to thank Superintendent Velasquez and his team, are going to give us, I know that the Board of Supervisors are also involved, of getting each district additional Chromebooks, and so they're ordering those, and those should be in the next few weeks as well. So appreciate that, and of course we'll bring that donation, and all those involved, we'll make sure we recognize everybody, but that's also part of our technology that we're still upgrading. And then the next one there, teacher technology. Of course, as we've gone through this, we know that teachers need an upgrade, and we were hoping that what we had in place was sufficient, but as we, again, progress through it, so we're making that commitment immediately as well of trying to get new technology for the teachers in their hands, as well as updating with RAM, additional RAM, and things to make sure that their tool that they do have is usable and sufficient for what they're trying to do as a teacher. And then the last thing there is the county benchmarks. So at the last board meeting, I mentioned that we most likely would be in the meet category for all three. And it turned out that as of today, I checked again, because there was some pending discussion from our meeting last Thursday, that the benchmark for number of positive tests, that number was incorrect, and because they felt that it should be below the 7% threshold because of the number of tests they had received or positivity had not been positive. And I had a meeting yesterday with ASA and Dr. Chris from the state, and she mentioned, because I had the same question, and the superintendent, one of the superintendents from Douglas had the same question, because our county, both our health departments tell us that that's inaccurate. And so we asked the question, and she said, yes, there may be some inaccuracies, but they are not going to update until this next update on Thursday. Initially had done a update on Friday after they had released the data, because it went from 10 to 11.4, which I thought would go the other direction, but it went up. And so according to Dr. Chris, that they know that there are some issues with recording and backlog and finding some of the results. So that could be adjusted again this Thursday coming up. But as it is when we talk about athletics, it does put our timeline at a different stage, because now we can't say that we have met all of the categories. But the one that I will say is also that we have met is the under 100 cases. That's the first week of that, which is the 1B of the first benchmark, where we had 37 active cases, which is 70 per 100,000 for our county. So those benchmarks are there. We're following that, and so that's one of the reasons. And so I'm going to somewhat make it official to today, is that the last meeting the board gave me authority to adjust as needed, and so my recommendation, and we will now notify the community and our parents that October 12th will be our official day, pending, of course, all the benchmarks are still in the meet area, and hopefully mild by then, because even though we're meeting, they're still in the moderate area. So October 12th, that day after fall break, will be where we would begin our hybrid instruction. So with that, any questions?
Mr. Hayes.
I'd like to go last for a change.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Hayes.
More an observation than a question, and that's on the positivity rate. I was looking at those numbers earlier, and I noticed that they put us back up to 14% as of today, and that's just simply because they had one test come in, and well, if one test is 14%, that means only 7 tests were done, which means we might be back to they're only testing people who they think might be sick with it, which is not going to give us a number that's usable. I really think we need to drive home the point with the state itself that they need to find a way to test everybody once and for all.
Yeah, and that was brought up yesterday again with Dr. Christ, and she knows, especially in rural communities where we're not testing, where there's not a significant amount of testing, that's why we tested, NUSD tested, and we're going to continue to test. So as we head into our possible athletics, when we get closer, we're going to continue to test all the athletes and coaches. We are going to continue to test our teachers and staff, as well as before we get to that October 12th opening, we will again test everybody that's going to be in the hybrid, and we will test the staff again, just so that we can keep in that area, because according to Dr. Bennett, that's essential for not only that metric, but just making sure that we're keeping aware because of the asymptomatic individuals that may not be having any sign that they are carrying the virus. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Newman?
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Kramer?
No, I'm good, thank you.
Mr. Ramirez?
Well, first I want to concur with Mr. Hayes. I agree with him. I was going to mention that too. I think that if you're only testing people who are sick, well, it's just going to give you such an inaccurate reading as to what's really going on. So yeah, we really need to test everyone. Otherwise, you're just testing, as he said, people who are suspected of being ill. And that's really going to color people's judgment. Dr. Pereira seemed to give good results for Patagonia and Rio Rico when he was talking to us in Nogales. So I was happy to hear about that. Got quite a few things, some questions to ask you about accommodations for teachers. I just want to make sure that the accommodations that they're requiring in the schools are being met by the principals.
So like accommodations.
Yeah, for if they want to come in and work and.
So we are different than, and I sent this to the association. There's difference between accommodation and modification. So accommodation is somebody that's in a high-risk area that has some underlying health issue and may have a family member that is in that category. So we asked employees in July when we initially sent out that questionnaire if they were in that category. If so, what is that? And so all of the accommodations are, yes, we've met all of those. Now, in addition to that, we know that there are those that may be apprehension about coming to a site or for whatever reason. So those we've asked to, again, fill out the paperwork as well to request a modification, because we do have the ability to modify somebody's work location, as long as they're able to meet that. So
I don't question any of that, Mr. Boob. I know you guys are doing a good job with that kind of thing. I just want to make sure that you follow through with the principals to make sure that if people are turning in the forms, that they're taking a hard look at them. That
Yes.
They're not just, giving them lip service.
No.
So I just want to make sure. I'm just asking you, could you just please
yeah,
do a second check, whatever check?
Yeah,
make
no,
sure.
I've done a 10 check. I'm just telling you, it's because it's again, I met with the association and wanted to be very clear, and they asked if they could share my notes. I said, I have nothing but transparency. So yes, share because we want to make sure that there should be no fear between any employee and their supervisor.
Thank you.
And I made that extremely clear, that there is no reason that they cannot talk to their supervisor. And if they have an issue, then they should go to HR. And if they're still not met and that's satisfactory, then they go to me. They follow our policy.
Sure.
Because that's our policy states that you go to the person that can directly solve that issue. And so I've made it get very clear.
I didn't question any of that, but thank you for the reassurances.
Yep.
And I just wondering, if a colleague is sick, if a teacher's sick, what are we doing in the event there? I mean, we don't have substitutes. I was just curious as to what District 35 is.
Yeah, we do have substitutes that we could call upon, and
Not only in hybrid, but in a situation like now.
same.
The same.
Yeah,
So you still have people come in and actually run the class like
if we need to. Yeah, we can work with a substitute to meet or adjust and add one of our current employees to support.
How about?
Yeah.
Within the same department.
Yep.
Logically, right?
Yes.
The Google Meets, and I was happy to hear about the updates because they're so crucial. And I just want to give a tip to my colleagues. I noticed the other day when I was teaching that if you have a small class, that you can have people work with one another right there in front of you, interviewing and stuff like that. So for all that's worth to anybody out there, if that helps you, great, terrific. I also wanted to say that I love that we have this attitude now of wait and see. In a way, it just kind of happened, it just materialized, that there could be a possibility in which our neighboring districts might open before us, which in a way gives us a distinct advantage to see what happens before we move on. And I also wanted to commend you for having this continuity with one system, with the online, until coming back as you have planned now, after the 9 weeks, and a possible hybrid model. I think that's a great idea. I mentioned that in the spring, that when we got to August, that we might have to, it might be better not to be the guinea pigs, you know, to wait and check out, see how things go on with our neighbors. So I love that. I just want to tell you that. And what else? I love that you had mentioned not letting the grass grow under your feet. Mr. Verdugo, I think that's one of your greatest strengths as a superintendent, and I love that very much about you and your team. You're always trying your hardest to stay on top of everything. So on that note, thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next item, athletics update, Mr. Verdugo.
Yeah, so again, based on the benchmarks, so initially the AIA came out with their calendar, and it had a phased-in approach with cross-country, cheerleading. I think for those the first two that were initially to start, and then the next week was volleyball, and then the next week after that was football, and that was dependent on us meeting, for me, the benchmarks. We're not going to necessarily jump on the AIA calendar and if our benchmarks are not met. So been working with Mr. Fanning, Dr. Lunderville, and Principal Estrada to determine what's the next step for us, because that may be a little bit different than our continuity approach to instruction. We're still going to be very, again, cautious and make sure that we are, but we're going to look at the benchmarks again, and then once we have met them, then determine, again, phased-in approach following the calendar, but on our own timeline. So Mr. Fanning is working on that. He's going to meet with parents tomorrow to make sure that we're, again, preparing with physicals, making sure that he informs them about testing, making sure that if any questions about health, safety, PPE, that we're making sure we have all of those, the protocols, temperature checks, disinfectants, all of the things that we would need to make sure that we're able to have our athletic programs run smoothly as much as possible. So what we're looking at, if the benchmarks, again, are met this Thursday, or we start to move in that direction, that we would start with September 7th as our initial with the cross-country cheerleading. And then the 14th would be then volleyball, and then September 21st would be football at that point. So that puts us a little bit behind some of the other districts that are starting, but that puts us actually in concert with a lot of the Pima County, Tucson schools that would be starting at the same time. It's just the schedules would just have to work out. So and the AIA is also still meeting to determine what their next steps are, because that may be adjusted as well. So Mr. Fanning, are you on the line?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So go ahead, if you want to go ahead and kind of reiterate. I know I shared kind of the plan, but I know that you have a little more detail, so if you would like to share that, please.
Sure. Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, and district administration. I just want to add, golf is also one of those low-risk sports that if everything works out the way we hope it works out this week, we'll be able to start on September 7th as well. Other than what Mr. Verdugo already expressed, I want to let the board know the safeguards that are being put in place to ensure that if and when our athletes and our coaches are back on the court, back on the field, that they're going to be in the best possible shape to make sure that their health is the number one priority. So, first bullet is that before anyone steps on any practice field, like Mr. Verdugo already mentioned, we need to make sure that the metrics are met and what I call all in the green. So that's the first priority. Second priority is that football, volleyball, cross country, golf, and spirit line head coaches will attend the Return to Play Phase 1 overview meeting conducted by myself. That already took place with the low-risk sports. So golf, cheer, and cross-country already had a thorough reading of what Phase 1 entails. So they are aware of all the guidelines that will be in place and that will be followed, once we return to play. Like I stated in that meeting, there is no gray, it is all black and white. The next bullet, each student and parent will read, sign, and abide by the Return to Play pledge or the district waiver prior to taking part in any organized practice or competition. I've been working directly with Dr. Lunderville, who has been working directly with the lawyer part of our district, making sure that everything is put in place. On the waiver or Return to Play pledge, it states, what the parents and what the students will do to ensure that they follow the guidelines and ultimately stay safe and free of COVID-19. The next bullet, football, volleyball, cross-country, golf, and spirit line head coaches will attend the Return to Play processes and procedures meeting conducted by trainer Ms. Anna Munt and supported by myself. That just happened this evening. Anna Munt, our trainer, who is going to be our, what I call the funnel for all athletes and coaches to get tested prior to any practice. She let them know exactly what the processes would be as the students arrive and as the coaches arrive on campus. So that took place today. And the next point I want to make is that all parents will have access to weekly, which happens on Thursday at the high school, weekly athletic updates. And like Mr. Verdugo already mentioned, we're going to have the annual fall parent, student, coaches meeting tomorrow evening at 5 o'clock, which will be live. At the meeting, we'll talk about what we normally talk about, with our parents and students regarding expectations, coaches' responsibilities, student responsibilities, and parent responsibilities. But at the end of that meeting will be a question and answer period, and I would assume that that question and answer period is going to be focused highly on COVID-19 and exactly what I'm talking about today, answering any questions that the parents or student athletes have regarding the return to play. And then lastly, like Mr. Verdugo already mentioned, I want to highly recommend that we have something in place that prior to return to play, every single athlete and every single coach has the ability to be tested to make sure that they are free of COVID-19. I know that Dr. Lunderville has many connections and has already been speaking with health professionals from the area, so I'm confident that we can make this happen. That is my report for the evening.
Thank you. Questions?
That was the only.
Yeah.
Okay, good. We'll move to questions. Ms. Newman.
None at this time, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ramirez.
I have none. Thank you, Madam President.
Mr. Hayes.
No questions, thank you.
Mr. Kramer.
Well, I do. I guess I have some observations sort of too, that this return to play process is developed by AIA, is that correct?
Part of it, yes, and the National Federation of High Schools.
Okay. If it's such a good process, why didn't NCAA adopt it, and why aren't they playing? Well, they had different grounds, and they went different routes, obviously, because I read through that. And I'm not disputing it, I'm just saying that I'm questioning AIA's, where they're at on this. ASU U of A are back in session, their kids are on campus, their kids are in dorms and such. We're backing off because we're saying, okay, we're really concerned about our kids staying home, going that way. They're always talking about the bubble of athletes, be it pros, colleges, keeping them. You see that Coach of Alabama said we've got everybody in our bubble, we're keeping them protected. Our kids, granted, we're going to be tested, we're following the protocol, but once they leave this campus, they're off the bubble in a sense, they're going home. On weekends, we don't know where they're in the bubble, where they're at. Granted, we'll be testing and such. that's what I'm just bringing out. I've always been a big supporter of athletics, but I'm just looking at what everything nationally is saying, no, hold off, hold off, hold off. Oregon, California did the same thing. Arizona, AIA is kind of saying, well, you know, maybe. I don't know, the final decision might be this Thursday, or maybe another week. But right now, they're planning to, let's go. I'm just bringing that up. I'm not trying to say, well, I'm just giving my opinion, because that's what we're here for, to give opinions. But I don't know if, me personally, I don't know. I don't know as a board member, could I support that? When I've seen other organizations saying, hold off. Even in the pro sports, you get a guy leaving the bubble, he's out for 14 days. They go off on the bubble, they're out. Quarantine, yes. That's the only thing I'm bringing up is this thing about the bubble talk and what they're doing. And I hope that as we get further in 2 weeks, we know a little more, maybe it's going well. But I think we really should still look at that. Because I think the last thing we want is having 3 or 4 or 5 members of the team all of a sudden have COVID. And they're saying, well, why'd you guys do that? You don't even have school. Again, I'm hypothetical, I'm just bringing up scenarios.
And that's why we would wait till the benchmarks are met, because then I would say that we could theoretically have them on campus. You know, and that's where, like Mr. Mason said, we wouldn't, until those benchmarks are met, we wouldn't begin that phased-in process. You know, and there is a lot of, you know, question, you know, with the different campuses starting, and, you know, and the teenagers, you know, 18 to 22-year-olds, you know, that Alabama already had 500 cases within the first 2 weeks of their non-athletes, you know, and their athletes are following the precautions, but I think that's the return to play pledge, and that we're going to have to make sure we're very adamant, because you're correct, if there's one person that does have it, then we would have to shut down that entire program, you know, at least for 14 days, and then at that point would probably be shut down for the season. You know, that's I'll give you an example. Like my 2 sons, you know, they're now back on their college campus. They're one tested, but they also have their bubble and their pledge. Their pledge is they're not allowed to go to any parties or congregate with outside of athletics. If they get caught, they get suspended. Second time if they get caught, then they would be suspended for the year. And then the third time, if anybody got caught that was the third time, they would lose their scholarship. So they're taking it very, very serious on a lot of the campuses, and even at the U of A, before they shut down, they had sent a few students home and reduced their scholarships. So I know that it's very, you know, as far as the precaution, it's something that we want to make sure we follow, but also there is the other side. There are those that are in club sports that have been going for months now, that have been participating without any testing, without any other requirements, without any masks or anything, and haven't had any issues. So it's hard to say, you know, with this unknown, I think the only thing we can do is just follow the guidelines that we do have set and not do anything until we get those benchmarks, because that's going to be the initial phase. And then once that happens, we'll bring it back to the board and make that, again, but that's the proposal, to at least have things in place in case we are able to start.
Thank you, Mr. Rudolph. I'm not trying to be the wet blanket.
No.
I'm trying to just point out the obvious. I'm not trying to be the know-it-all or anything to that.
No.
I'm just saying that I think it's a bigger picture that certainly what you're bringing in.
Yeah.
And I think we really have to be analytical on it before we even move forward.
Yep, and I think the benchmarks are key.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, next item, the ASBA Law Conference, Mr. Verdugo.
Yes, thank you. So we have the law conference coming up on September 9th through 11th. And the request was made to see if the board would have an appetite for a few things there. So for site reviewing, if that was something that the board would like to do, since we are not able to travel again, it is virtual. And Angie is checking with TUBAC to see if they would have a space for us and to do that. Also, the district office would be available, or if everybody want to stay at their own personal location, that's obviously an option as well. And then the session selection, that will be out as well, because that kind of goes into that number one of the site reviewing, if we're all viewing different breakout sessions, you know, having space for that with headphones or whatever it may be. And then, because the keynotes are all together, they're you know, for the most part until the afternoon, the sessions. And then the third thing there is just, I know we talked about when we go to conferences, having the ability to debrief and discuss those. So whether we do it the same day or schedule a study session, you know, of learnings, and we can do that at a separate time if we choose to. But again, we wanted to share that because again, that was a request from the board to kind of look at that, to provide a space and an opportunity for an experience. So, turn it over to the board.
Okay. Ms. Newman? Any questions, any discussion?
I would just like to say I would still feel more comfortable in my own little space, my own little bubble here at home.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Ramirez?
I have no comments, Madam President.
Okay. Mr. Hayes?
I'm pretty open to any of the suggestions. I do like the idea of at a minimum, the study session for debriefing afterwards. But I can probably swing it any way we decide to go.
Okay.
Madam President,
Yes?
I agree with Mr. Hayes. I think it would be good. No matter what the board decides, I'd be with it, you know, the shard of unity and, or for whatever positive purposes.
For me, I have all set up that I'll be able to use, you know, the virtual from the office, and it would not be possible for me to take time off. I also don't really understand the idea of getting together and yet sitting with headphones on separately. So I think that, you know, post study session to discuss what we've heard would be good. But Mr. Kramer?
Well, I would have to do it somewhere, I guess. This is either in my home or somewhere, I don't have the luxury of work. So it'd have to be somewhere separated, and my house is not really the greatest place at times. For me personally, I might be in a bedroom or a little office, but sometimes it's good to get away because there's distractions at times. But the way I see it is too, what I think Mr. Verdugo touched on it, is that when we are together, we always kind of say, oh, you're going this one, oh, I'm going to that one, especially the breakout sessions. If we're not even near each other, well, then there's no discussion.
Well, but they've almost got the full schedule out, so we can do that in advance.
Yes and no. When I'm saying this, sometimes I even choose yes, I'm going to go, and then I start looking at it and say, oh, you know what, this is not quite what I wanted, and I pop out and go to another one.
Yeah, that we're not going to have that luxury.
You know, and you can certainly pop out of this and just join. I'm just saying that is because we're all four here right now doing this. And why not, well, five, excuse me, 4 board members. I know Ms. Newman is appropriately taking care of herself by being in it, and I understand that. But at least if we had the opportunity to do that, I don't know about the afterwards, then if we're all at our homes.
Madam President, I see nothing wrong with having a Zoom meeting to do a debriefing or some
This
kind
one's
of
done.
a
Thank you.
draft or, you know.
Again.
I cannot meet with anybody else right now because I have too many underlying conditions, and a family member of mine is very ill from this disease, and I do not want to infect myself or them.
Right, and my reasons are different, but it precludes me being able to attend as a group. So I mean, if the rest of you want to get together somewhere, that's fine, but yeah, I think there's a way that we can debrief afterwards. But we probably should try to coordinate as far as what sessions anybody's going to.
I suppose, whatever the board decides, I'm indifferent, really.
I mean, there were some that I really wouldn't want to spend any time on, so I guess, you know, we'll have to decide. There may be some breakout sessions that we will all be attending together, and we won't get that variety. But, I mean, sometimes that happens at the actual event as well. So,
And what I can do is try to put something together with Angie that would just kind of, you know,
Suggestions.
where everybody's at, and then also some suggestions as to, you know, if we want to do it at Tubac, this is what it is and what the cost would be, and if we want to do it here, this is, and then again, an option for a Saturday study session of some sort, and you know, then debrief there, and maybe add some additional items that are of interest of the board, maybe separate from our learning set that maybe a deeper dive into some of those things. So we can, I'll work with Angie to put something together, and then that way we can kind of just see who, you know, what sessions everybody's interested in, and just put that together for us as kind of a plan of action, and then we can decide if we wanted to, again, go someplace. I could even, you know, I mean, there's options. We could even talk to Nichols. I'm sure, you know, Nick would give us a space there, you know, in the back, you know, somewhere of you know, doing that if that's the case. Because I know Angie is waiting to hear back from Tubac as well, so that we are exploring those options just to see. But we'll share with the board. We'll come up with something.
Thank you, Mr. Rickman.
okay, as the General Assembly delegate selection, Mr. Verdugo.
Yes, so we do have the delegate assembly still continuing, so we need to select our delegate for our board. So I guess we'd be open for any nominations and motions.
Madam President, I'd like to nominate our fellow down here, John, if he's interested.
And who is experienced.
Right, and who's been doing very well.
I second that.
Okay. We have a motion, we have a second. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of John Hayes being our assembly delegate, please say aye.
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 Carries, thank you. Okay. Aspen Santa Cruz County meeting nomination for county director, Mr. Verdugo.
Yes, so we have the county meeting coming up, and it is different because it's going to be virtual, and normally, you know, we've hosted quite a bit. And at that meeting, there will be a nomination and selection for a county director. We would thank Ms. Newman for her service of doing that job and doing it quite well for a period of time. So what I would recommend for our board is to nominate somebody, if that was what our board would like. I know that, I'm assuming that the other boards may nominate somebody, but I do think that, of course, I'm biased, that we do a much better job of handling the county meetings and organizing and doing those things. So it would be my recommendation, if we would like to, that we would come together and make a motion to nominate somebody for that position, and that would be then our vote as well.
Okay. I know that in the past, Mr. Hayes, you've been interested in that position. Do you have continued interest?
I do, Madam President.
Okay, then I will go ahead and nominate Mr. John Hayes for county director.
Straight choice. I second that.
Motion, we have a second. Do we have any discussion?
I would say then, because this tends to be sometimes how it is, that we at least put our little feelers out there to other board members, to other districts, just to encourage some support for Mr. Hayes. And And we can do that because there's no rules about supporting and promoting our own. So with that said, that's what I will at least try to do in John's part. Hopefully it doesn't backfire, John.
As long as it doesn't flood and I have to tell people no.
Hopefully it's not raining at all.
Yeah. Okay, we have a motion, we have a second, we've had just some discussion. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, so then when we get to that survey, we will notify them that Mr. Hayes is our nomination.
Mr. Frew, it slipped my mind. When's the meeting again?
I can't remember it. I don't know if Angie knows offhand. But I know that for the nominees, yes, I think it's October.
Yeah, that's what I'm remembering. I just can't remember the exact date all of a sudden.
And you will have the opportunity to make a speech or whatever at that point as well.
I'm just looking at my calendar because I remember saying yes to it,
Yeah.
but I don't know.
I know it's in,
October?
I think it's October, it's in, or one of the early.
Yes,
counties.
one of the early ones in October is what I recall too.
Okay, so moving on, Executive Order 2020-51, Order 6, Continuity of Pay Resolution. Mr. Verdugo.
Yes, so we've been very fortunate to have all of our employees actually working, whether they've been accommodated or having a modification as they requested. And our bus drivers, as you saw last week, have been doing a lot of training and a lot of different aspects of their job. But we are getting to the point now where we would either have to change some of their job duties because we haven't started the hybrid when we'll be transporting students. I mean, they're still going to be doing some 4 additional different duties. But this resolution allows us to, that continuity of pay, that if we have to place them on call versus actual different duty, that we're able to do so. And the executive order allowed us to do that. And it could be any employee. I just use the bus driver as an example because they're the ones that generally are the ones affected most. And so we wanted to make sure that we have that continuity in pay, that our employees feel secure, that there is, if there is any issues for whatever reason, an outbreak, and we have to close, or any of those type of things, that we have this resolution in place to say we will have the continuity of pay for our employees.
Are there any questions? Mr. Ramirez?
I have none, thank you, Madam President.
Mr. Hayes?
Just one, I assume that legals.
Yes, it was.
Passed this?
Yes, it was their template, and I just adjusted the district.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Newman?
None at this time, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kramer.
Not at this time, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so recommended action, is there a motion then to approve the resolution of Executive Order Continuity of Pay as presented?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries. Thank you.
And I would like to thank the board for that, because I know that that's a comfort to our employees, so I appreciate the support on behalf of the employees.
Yeah. Okay, propose and prioritize topics and possible dates and times for future board meetings. Ms. Newman?
I don't have anything, but if I could ask the board's indulgence and just give my little brief board report. Is Mr. Shadow on the line at all?
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Shadow, this is actually about you. A few weeks ago, somebody from another district and also a family friend asked me to ask Mr. Shadow for his knowledge regarding a different university that I don't go to, and I don't really want to say, but anyway, they asked for his expertise, and he was so gracious and gave them his views on this university. But my point is that we are so well known for our track and field team that they felt secure to reach reach out to a board member to get his opinion. And Mr. Shadler, that meant more to me than you can ever know, and I really appreciate you for that. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Newman. I appreciate the comments, and I'm happy to do it. So thank you.
And I just wanted to show how well thought of all of our people in our little district of Santa Cruz Unified Valley 35 are. And you're just such great people. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so, Mr. Ramirez, did you have any?
Yes, I'd like to know, this can be an FYI, I'd just like to know how much we've saved thus far compared to last year on substitutes. I'd really like to know that. And I have another one that's very dear to me, and dear, I'm sure, to lots of people that are here tonight, including colleagues at Rio Rico High School. And that's that Jeff Madron, he passed away in 2000, and we're coming up on his 20th anniversary, which would be October 10th. And I'd really like to see us do something special for him, to honor him. There are lots of people that are still around here, including Mr. Kramer, Mr. Shadler, Mr. Fanning, who knew him very well. We have lots of colleagues, Yvette, Bailey Hernandez, Chris Peters, just go on and on. Ms. Potter, we're very dear friends of his, and so we have that nice plaque, but I'd like to see us maybe do something to have a ceremony for him, or something of the sort, to honor him. And again, October 10th will be the 20th anniversary of his passing away. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Mr. Hayes?
I have two items also, Madam President. One is, as an FYI, I mean, as we can all see by looking outside, our air quality of late has been rather bad. So just FYI on what our policies are and procedures for when we have these bad air quality days, especially for our staff, students, and athletes, assuming normality returns at some point. The other, as many of us were aware, a contractor from a neighboring county cut the fiber optic cable twice in the exact same location 1 week apart, taking much of the county down from the internet. And I was wondering what were the impacts to our distance learning that happened, and what are the plans that we have in place for either having to make up that time or dealing with those situations when it takes a large percentage of our population out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hayes. You're saying normality and not normalcy, which is the correct word, the preferred word.
Mr. Kramer?
No, I don't.
Okay, thank you. Approval of the consent agenda. Any matter on the consent agenda will be removed from the consent agenda and discussed as regular agenda item upon the request of any board member. Does any board member have any item?
Yes, number 11. EPARS, specifically Sarah Lopez.
Mr. Kramer?
No, I do not.
Mr. Hayes?
No, ma'am.
And I would like to claim my conflict of interest on Francisco Padilla, so if that could be removed and voted on separately, I'd appreciate it. He is my immediate supervisor, and this vote probably would not impact my employment, but nonetheless, it falls under the conflict of interest.
Thank you, Madam President. I think that's very wise.
So, Sarah Lopez was your,
Yes.
okay, and Francisco Padilla. So is there a motion to?
Madam President?
Excuse me, did you call me? Did you?
I'm sorry. Did you have an item you wanted to have removed?
No, I just wanted to recuse myself from the whole agenda.
The whole consent agenda?
Yes, the whole.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so is there a motion to approve the consent agenda, removing Sarah Lopez and Francisco Padilla?
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion, we have a second, any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, now, Sarah Lopez.
Yes, Mr. Lugo, I just want to say that I worked with Sarah for many years, and she's a really fine lady who's worked so hard, toiled so hard for all those years for District 35. Hats off to you, Sarah, if you're listening tonight. She's awesome. As you well know, she goes the extra mile for us all the time, including having organized all those basketball, all those basketball games between the faculty and the students, and she doesn't get paid one dime for that. And I forgot to mention her, people at U, I think, choose UJEF and basketball in the basketball world. I think even you did, sir.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to thank her for everything that she's done. I was happy to see that she's a team leader. And we really need people like that, people that have sound character and good judgment. So, thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
So is there a motion to approve Sarah Lopez for the Individualized Education Plan Facilitator for $2,500?
So moved.
Second?
We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Okay, motion carries. I said aye as well. And now Francisco Padilla, is there a motion to approve Francisco Padilla for the assistant coach boys basketball for $1,000?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Any discussion? Hearing none.
I just like to say that I know him and he's really good and he's a really great person and I think you do a great job and so thank you.
Thank you. So voting will just be the three of you. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Motion carries.
Didn't matter, see, I could have just voted no, and it would have been 2-1. Poncho, just kidding.
Okay, governing board meeting evaluation. Mr. Kramer, would you?
Thank you for going through this agenda, Madam President. I think it went very well. Thank you, Mr. Verdugo, for informing us.
Okay, so, this meeting adjourns at 6:22 p.m.